Hey, this is Notser, and today we're talking about potential CV rework adjustments. Also, maybe there's a potential fix for overpowered premiums. Wargaming seems to be testing a solution. And then I wanted to talk about the mechanical adjustments to Flood and Radar. So, CV rework, not balanced as much as we would have hoped. Probably the worst thing about the balancing is the Tier 10 Hakudu. Its torpedo systems are egregiously broken. I mean, it should not have made live with this precise design. And unfortunately, it took a while for people to discover how to do this. I'm sure people knew, and they were waiting for it to go live so then they could farm. This is just how online multiplayer games work. You discover a weakness or an exploit or something, an extreme fringe that gives you an advantage, and you hold on to that until you can make use of it. And then it catches like wildfire and the whole server is ruined by it. That's pretty much what we're at right now. Every Tier 10 Hakudu that I have run up against is actively exploiting the stealth torpedo mechanic. They can put 12 stealth torpedoes that go 8 kilometers to 6.7 every 40 or 50 seconds. They just flood the water, and it's annoying. You can't really counter it as a surface ship because there's too much torpedoes in the water. Even when you group up, it just has ruined the in-game experience, and until it's hotfixed, it's an example of why the CV rework is a huge failure. You know, we were hoping that the balance would not go that far, that something would be introduced that just completely ruins it and requires a full hotfix immediately is unfortunate. Most of the reason why I was playing Tier 7 and below is because I did not want to play against those Tier 10s. I don't want to be stealth torpedoed endlessly and have no response because you could drop it outside of everyone's AA range. No, that doesn't sound fun. And obviously, it should never have happened. It was just too powerful, and circumstances all came together where it was ridiculous, right? And it's going to be hotfixed. I think it's going to be hotfixed in a way that will hopefully maintain some of the unique flavor that this torpedo squadron that is exploitable brought. It is potentially available for a stealth torpedo still. I think that's obviously the direction they wanted to go with the torpedoes. They wanted to be stealth and they wanted to be impactful. Well, you didn't really need to stealth torpedo them. It's basically stealth torpedo when there's no response from the enemy, right? So the Hakudu, huge issue. F key spam. They're going to try and implement some sort of penalty when you press the F key to forcibly recall your aircraft. I think that penalty will be your aircraft will fly straight for a set duration. Don't know how long. But if aircraft are flying straight over a ship, the flak burst could be placed right in front in 5 seconds, and you could fly through it, and that squadron could die. So they could very easily fix the F key spam by just implementing a little bit of a automatic flying straight by the AI while it's gaining control to gain altitude and to actually return. That would be really easy to implement, and that would get rid of it immediately. There would be no advantage to pressing the F key over a ship. Hopefully what they do is they implement that, and it forces players to leave the area, the AA area of the enemy, and then they can press their F key and not risk losing any of their aircraft if they needed to switch their squadron. Ideally, you would continue with that squadron until it's exhausted, and then automatically return to your ship, and there would be no penalty that way. It would incentivize using all 3 or 4 of your attack runs in a squadron without reducing F key's viability at just switching squadrons. I don't really see that existing that long. That'll be a very easy fix. They wanted to do some overall AA balancing. They feel like the continuous damage is not high enough. The high portion damage, the flak, is too easily avoidable for really skilled players. So they want to increase the number of continuous damage. And the continuous damage is a really small number, which is enhanced by sector switching. Right now, and basic firing training. That's the highest potential damage you can get in that system. And it shows. If you get good ships that happen to have just the perfect set of stats, like the Minotaur, or hell, even the Z-52 was impressive, its AA actually is more powerful in this system than it was previously. And I know that might sound crazy. Yes, the Minotaur has more powerful AA in this system relative than it did previously. All of the ships that relied on defensive fire, they suck. Because defensive fire sucks. And hopefully defensive fire gets improved. One of the reasons defensive fire sucks so much is because people can press the F key and bail out on you immediately. Well, I'm sure that just changing that one little F key thing, removing the ability for the ship to immediately bail out, they will bait themselves into flying straight through the defensive fire. I don't know if defensive fire itself needs more changes. I've said, range increase during the duration would be cool, but it sounds like Wargaming feels like that is one thing they don't want to touch, the range of their AA guns. And I can respect that. I totally respect that. The balance between destroyers and attack planes. Now, DDs are hunted endlessly by aircraft carriers, and the only response the DDs have is basically to retreat to their teammates. Hide and smoke. Wish you weren't in that game. So a lot of DDs just don't play in random battles that they can face aircraft carriers. It sucks. But one thing that they do highlight is that DDs can potentially be completely stealthed up until 3.5 kilometers. There's really no reason to have your AA on initially. You want to try and bait the enemy to commit fully to the attack. But that still leaves it, if you're, extended forward, going after the objective, the aircraft carrier is actively working against what makes the DD want to have fun and the enjoyable play state that the DD exists at. If the continuous damage goes up, the DD, above all else, can get their continuous the highest possible, their every single tick, because guess what? Their priority sector is very easy to switch. They get the highest percentage gain from it. It makes sense. So I'm hoping that they're going to be doing a much better job of allowing the DD to feel like its decision matters at protecting not only itself, but people around it. I really, really, really hope that Wargaming develops it to where if you're just playing the game base, or you have the weak side of your sector, you can't reliably generate enough continuous damage to work through the enemy aircraft as they're attacking. But if you're someone who can skillfully have, your sector always on the incoming target, you've enhanced it the right way with the skills and the thought process, your continuous damage should be noticeable. You should be getting kills on enemy aircraft, and if the kills are occurring when they're aiming, the aim should be slightly adjusted. If you've noticed that if you lose aircraft during an attack, the aim is sort of moved around, I think that's a good counter move that will allow skillful carrier players to be able to develop the ability, regardless of how many aircraft they have, and if they lose it on the attack, they can still accurately, reliably get some chip damage. And I think that's already there. The way the aim is adjusted in real time, where you have to, in a split second, make the adjustment if you lose an aircraft. I think if we can get the continuous damage up, that it feels impactful, players will have to develop their skill further, and that would be another sign of a skillful player. And obviously, if they don't touch the way flak works, unskillful players who consistently run through flak and haven't improved, well, they're just going to still be in that state. The flak will still punish them immediately, and they won't get any chance to drop even their first squadron attack. So it's a win-win. Skillful carrier players develop even further a room to, show off that skill, and then unskillful carriers, it doesn't really change. They still have to improve at the basic flak avoidance before they move on to how much continuous damage can they sustain. If they lose an aircraft, can they still have an accurate attack? I think all that will be a good direction if we can get there, if we can get the continuous damage to be noticeable. Another thing that they mentioned, they feel like the premium CVs and also the UK CVs are not balanced. They do still require balance. The Tier 10, the Audacious, very good. The Indomitable, the Premium, those aircraft are very impactful. Plus, the torpedo drop. It's very good. compared to something like the Americans. The Americans have horrible torpedo systems. I would like overall balance to be improved in those sectors. Obviously, there's a priority list, and I doubt very seriously improving the playability is as important as basic balance, but eventually they'll get there, hopefully. Tier 4 carriers feel pretty underpowered. Tier 10 carriers feel a little overpowered, with exceptions on certain squadrons feeling just awful. Midway torpedo. But that's stuff that they want to improve. They want to improve the UI for plane reserves. AA sector, better usability, thank you. I don't like the way you control sectors right now. They don't want the minimap to share all that CV information unnecessarily, only to the CV, thankful. They want to introduce CV bots into co-op, good. The amount of quality spotting and the number of aircraft carriers in the queue for each game is up for debate. I personally feel like if we make AA more impactful, more punishing to the carrier, then that they'll be less likely to feel like they can spot and damage and do all this together without any risk of the ship. For the number of aircraft carriers, let's not let 3. 3 is annoying. It's terrible. It makes the game horrible. I prefer 1. Some prefer 2, but I don't know anyone that prefers having 3 carriers per side. That's awful. Never want to do that ever again. I really don't know how it made live, other than they had concerns that the queue would be too long. I'd rather have the queue be too long than have 3 carriers, honestly. They just ruin the game. So, carrier stuff. A lot of changes need to be made quickly, and I can't wait for those changes. Wargaming has explored the idea of rebalancing an overpowered premium by moving it up 1 tier. It's maintaining its value, it's honestly increasing in value, but it's not remaining as powerful tier for tier. Now there is concerns, and they're valid, that a company would just exploit this by releasing it overpowered, then just release it 1 tier higher, rebalanced. Obviously, if they did that, they would lose me as a customer and many of you, because they would actively be exploiting the system. But if they were to use this every so often to introduce a overpowered ship that they had to remove, the Nikolai, you've got the Belfast, obviously Giulio Cesare. If they were to reintroduce it in a balanced state and allow it for purchase, I would be all for that. I want the game balanced over anything else. Now, we really didn't get to Flood or the radar system, but there's a developer bulletin for 8.1, and they're talking about the changes they're implementing. I hope this was interesting. In the comments, leave what you think about these things. Obviously, the hotfix can't come fast enough for the CVs. And then I can't wait to see the Tier 6 Giulio Cesare. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you next time.